And now with video. My goodness, I keep doing that. So hello, everyone. It is Wednesday, the 25th of February, 2025. I'll get it right someday. I'm new to the content creator Rumble studio. I was using StreamYard, and but in order to qualify to be a content creator on Rumble, which starts in March, I have to go off of the Rumble streaming services, and there's so many different things that I can't access on this that I was able to on StreamYard. But I'm sure this is going to be fixed. It is still a newer platform, but I digress. I want to get right into it. I want to get right into it because it's finally coming out. People like myself who have been called crazy, who have been called conspiracy theorists, all of this stuff for years, finally getting vindication. Finally getting a little bit more vindication, and it's because mainstream media and legacy media and independent journals that have been getting it wrong for years are finally phasing out as deserved, except for CBC. They want to double their funds and make it with their even more state-funded media, which is Orwellian, and I will reiterate that. But anyways, getting into Michelle Ferrari, she gets sharing more stats, and she's a member of parliament on the conservative side, and she is, I would say, one of my favorite members of parliament at this point. And anyway, Canada, household debt as share of gross domestic product, GDP. Canada, top of the list, 103%. Down to that, it's 23% lower, but you have the UK at 80%, still high. US 73%, I would still say, is really high. France and China, 63 and 62% respectively, and then you go down from there. Turkey and Mexico seem to be faring much better off. Russia, Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Canada, number one on the list. But look, our economy is so great. Our economy is so great under Chrystia Freeland and with advice from people like Mark Carney, a deep state plant elitist, globalist. And it's not even a globe, but anyway. And I will get to that. Yeah. So Irving, more Canadian job losses that they're trying to blame on Trump. Hilarious. Irving Paper lays off nearly half its employees. He's been in office for a little over a month now, and people are blaming all of this from Canada, different ass country, different ass leadership, blaming it on him. Make it make sense? Irving Paper lays off nearly half its employees, blames cost of electricity. And I've shared my my bills for my heating and even my propane with the carbon tax, just how much is impacting people more significantly in rural areas, people that are needed to be in these areas, and forcing them to shut down, and lives impacted, destroyed. And yeah, targeting the wrong thing, but unfortunately, it's this is going to be politicized. I thought there was more on it. Anyways, Bud's the bustin'. He has a lot more on that. I want to get this post. It's not showing it. Sometimes I can't. Anyway, I'll just read it. This is from Michael Barrett. Actually, maybe I will share it on X as well. Anyways, access to information documents revealed the RCMP opened an investigation into the Liberal government's We charity scandal. Like I've said, We, that's Trudeau's philanthropy organization, whatever you want to call it. And I've been saying that these foundations for years, like there's the money laundering, there's kickbacks, there's people that are taking this money that are even friends and family of people that opened up these charities and stuff like that, and stealing taxpayers' money, like just full up. It's in here. We charity scandal. Trudeau gave We charity $900 million contract after We paid the Trudeau family almost $300,000 in speaking fees. It goes on from there too, and they refused to give the financials to the RCMP under Brenda Lucki. And you know what she said? Blatant crimes being committed. It's okay. Oh, it's okay. If that was anyone else other than people, like this is a two-tiered political system, and lawfare has been used for way too fucking long. And Brenda Lucki should also be investigated and in jail.
I
know that sounds dramatic, but like until people start getting held accountable for the corruption and what they did to Canadians over these past few years, and just like look at how we are suffering now, and they're trying to say that we're not because we're in election season now. It's just it's very interesting. So I hope you can hear this. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Lockdowns. He highlighted this about propaganda.
HHS.
Jay Brateria. Yeah. he was bang on a lot of different things.
Who is a scientist from Stanford who was sounding the alarm about the harm of lockdowns. He highlighted this about propaganda.
HHS commissioned a public relations firm named Force Marshburg in September of 2020, and then spent almost $1 billion over the course of the Biden administration, essentially to propagandize the American public. Their themes were the main goal was to tell people that if you don't get the COVID vaccine, you are unclean.
The main goal was to say that the unvaccinated were unclean, a danger, right? Don't focus on the benefits as much. Focus on scapegoating the unvaccinated.
Yeah. And dehumanizing. And you're not clean because you're unvaccinated. First of all, I'm very clean. Shower all the time. Like, I wash my hands. I work out, eat healthy. Within reason. I'm not perfect with that, and I obviously smoke and like cigars and pot and stuff like that. But again,
two ways to sort of convince people, and I think the fear of being in this category and ostracization is enough.
And so you A-B that to what we saw on TV is wild.
We are not the problem. The problem are the unvaccinated.
The unvaccinated threat.
Unvaccinated people are a threat, a direct threat.
The threat to all of us.
The unvaccinated are a risk to all of us.
People have a right to be protected from the unvaccinated.
Maybe there should be laws that allow them to be kept out of the building. So at least, thankfully, they're not breathing the same air.
Their freedom to breathe will diminish. Start firing the unvaccinated.
If you don't vaccinate, you'll be fired.
Time to come down on the unvaccinated.
They should be banned from the VA, banned from restaurants, banned from other businesses and colleges.
Companies should not treat us as equals.
Place unvaccinated people under arrest.
It is the unvaccinated that has put America in the place that it is.
We are losing freedom because people are unvaccinated.
Towards the unvaccinated. I'm furious at the unvaccinated.
Frustrated with Americans still not vaccinated.
Not to be vaccinated seems criminal.
Suspects face years behind bars for coughing on police officers.
Their freedom.
For them charged with terrorist threats.
You have no individual rights when it comes to the vaccine.
Really, you're killing other people.
We're being attacked by unvaccinated.
The unvaccinated who aren't wearing masks. It's the unvaccinated who aren't social distancing. It's the unvaccinated going to crowded indoor events.
It is not your right as an American citizen to catch and transmit a potentially fatal infection.
So screw your freedom. We can coerce you.
You're not going to be able to travel to see your family.
If someone in your family isn't vaccinated, should you ask them not to show up?
Yes, you really shouldn't have anyone unvaccinated come to dinner. That's just a huge risk.
It's wild when you look back
it's pretty fucked.
When the emotion isn't there anymore necessarily, and you look back at it and you go, oh my God, the whole world went insane.
Yeah.
And like, not just insane, but like an evil level of insane. Jay Bhattacharya, who is a scientist from Stanford, who was sounding the alarm about.
Yeah, just listening to that again just blows my mind, just how bad it was. And I could keep on saying this, but I did lose a lot because of not getting vaccinated and speaking out on the lockdowns, the mandates, and the forced inoculations, and the canned forgens, and the policies, and the mandates, and everything that was pushed. I for a couple of years, I was not able to see my family because I was in a different province, and they all live in a different province. Like we're from Quebec, je viens de Quebec, and and I was doing even just before COVID and stuff like that. I was already linked in with the heads of banking systems or security, or their heads of security and stuff like that. People that these were multi-million-dollar contracts, and millionaires that I was hanging out. I was invited into these networks and went to the cottages, the chalets and stuff like that, and having conversations with people during this time. It was really not well received at all, and I ended up not being invited back to any events. No work opportunities, none of that, just because of that. That's just one example out of many. I could have done security work with Dr. Jordan Peterson and his family. That opportunity was provided to me, but I had to be vaccinated, not because he was forcing it at all, but because the travel, just by virtue of the Canadian policies and mandates and restrictions and stuff like that, and the international ones, I wasn't able to. So I will reiterate, he was not asking for that stuff even early on that I'm aware of, and I know people that were literally working his detail. And said he was amazing, that his daughter was amazing, had nothing but good things to say about these people, which says a lot in our community, right? Okay, so there was that. And then other contracts I had that first they got delayed, and then again, completely not hired back because of not, again, at first because of not being vaccinated, and then because I was seen as a conspiracy theorist moving forward. And so I literally lost a lot. I wasn't able to go to restaurants or gyms or travel, including even for personal reasons, not just for work, and opportunities to go to the Ukraine. I know people that went to Ukraine to assist with medevac and all these other things, and gain information on the ground and other things. And because I wasn't vaccinated, I was not able to get on the aircraft to even go there. Same thing. There's just so many examples, and so I say my part because people keep on forgetting that there are people that were profoundly impacted, even that were at the highest levels of government. I'm saying I even had a friend that had over 20 years in, and she was kicked out while pregnant, an Army officer, under a 5F dishonorable discharge, and she's fighting this in the courts, and because of not getting vaccinated. And again, I will reiterate, she was high risk. Helen Gruce, she was Ottawa Police Services, still is, over 20 years with her as well, and she was literally an expert at her job, a professional, and her evaluation reports demonstrated this for many years throughout her career, and she's still being charged with that, like she's getting discredited because she was like looking into more like the investigations into a possible link between sudden infant deaths and the therapeutic rollout, and still under lawfare. And then I can talk about Tamara Leach and the Coots brothers, but I'll get into that. And this is wild. And I have said that my sister as well has had birds for like our entire lives. Like I remember when we got to Gaspé at a very young age. I'm oversharing my life again, but she was always someone that was raising animals, and including ducks and chickens and turkey, you name it. And yeah, she's talking about like sicknesses and flu, and I told you that, like she said that it's just like something that like it can build immunity. She wouldn't kill her animals because they were sick, and she's never heard of that before. And she also doesn't agree with all of these forced inoculations on animals and culling and killing birds. So farmers beg CFIA not to kill their ostriches, are told they must follow policy. I remember other people that just said they were just following the rules when they were murdering. Oh yeah, the Nazis, the Gestapo, and countless others, right? And so like that excuse in 2025, I'm just doing my job, doesn't fucking land anymore. Because if your job is to actually harm people or resources or animals,
that's 34 years of animals that live to 75. They have names. You tell Connor, you tell Ethan, you tell Hayden, you tell each one of them that you're going to come in here and shoot them. Tell Speckles.
This isn't something
tell
that
Lulu.
we want to be doing. But there's a policy in place that we must follow.
Well, it's time. This is the first in Canada. This is the time you guys can change the policies. You can put
and look what they're wearing too. They're such cowards too. Like this is like not for like the ostriches are not even sick, by the way. And she was saying they're 34 years old. They live to be 75. So for many years, this woman has had these ostriches. And like I have animals, I have pets. Like this would be completely like I would be brokenhearted. Like I would be devastated. And Smokey's only 5.5 years old. Like I couldn't imagine like having 30 more years with him, and then him possibly like I just can't believe we're at this level.
Every bird looks healthy, please.
And none of these people look like they've ever like were born and raised on any type of a fucking farm to have any expert opinion, let alone murdering animals just because I was told to do it.
Our decision to make. To go against the entire industry,
make that decision. Yeah, when do you say they're looking at changing it, please?
National industry in consultation with the CFIA and the Canadian government. That's if you want to say, okay, we're not going to eradicate. We want
don't even
to
have a
do
license.
something different. That's a conversation that has to happen at the national level.
Yeah. Yep. Canada is such a. It's very Orwellian.
Getting this shot.
I love this COVID stuff coming out more.
Give me some volume. So he's getting his shot with his stupid mask on. He's got his
shot.
He's got it
accomplished. And it is time to stop coddling them, the ones who won't get the damn shot already. And our first step, you and I, is symbols, the language we use. We call these people vaccine hesitant, vaccine skeptics, anti-vax. We say they're protesting mandates and passports. They're making a personal choice. They're waiting for more information. They're making a medical decision. Bullshit. They're afraid. They're afraid to get vaccinated.
Correct.
Stop feeding their egos about what they're doing. Stop legitimizing it. Vaccine hesitant, they're afraid. Vaccine skeptics, they're afraid. Anti-vax, they're afraid. They're protesting mandates and passports. They're afraid.
The little bit of spittle in his upper lip makes it.
They're afraid.
A little weak soy boy beta saying that people that didn't get vaccinated, people that have served this fucking country at home and abroad, he's calling us afraid. First of all, if you look at my immunization booklet that I have like right there, I have a lot of what I thought were vaccines and inoculations and stuff like that already. I was even boosted for fucking typhoid. I've talked about all of this stuff when I started looking into the Maplequin cases and got involved in the mass tort. That's when I started looking more into this. This had nothing to do with cowardice, idiot. In fact, it was the complete opposite. You were the one that fucking ran. And anyways, I won't even get into that. I'll let him
extra
talk.
good.
They're waiting for more information. Afraid. They're making a medical decision to be afraid. The snowflakes are afraid.
Okay, you can stop.
Afraid.
We get it. Isn't it wonderful?
Wow.
But he's doing this for social credit. He's doing this to virtue signal. He's doing this to show everybody. He's holding up his card. I'm compliant. You know.
And he thinks it's going to benefit him.
Oh yeah,
somewhere there's a payoff.
Socially, he feels like he is on the side of the intelligent people who trust the science. Yeah,
I wonder if someone asked him to do the video.
I doubt it,
but
maybe, possibly. I know that they definitely did encourage people to post things on social media.
Yeah, so it was encouraged enough to the point where you got a little reward emotionally.
Good job, Keith.
But they're leveraging that authority and the tribe.
Yeah,
like I'm not.
Keith Olbermann, and we had so many lunatics too in Canada as well that were like doing the same thing, even worse than him. I've showed like the unhinged. Just anyway,
nobody celebrity's going to talk like that on TV unless lots of people agree.
Yep.
He's got to have a lot of backing.
Plenty of people agreed with him. But the thing about it is, like, afraid of what? Like, you're not saying what they're afraid of. They're afraid of what everyone's experiencing right now, Keith.
Yeah.
Massive side effects.
Yeah.
Look at the amount of people that have myocarditis. Look at the rises and all of these autoimmune disorders and all these different things that neurological conditions that people are dealing with that are vaccine injured.
I've got a friend of mine that was kicked out of the military for not getting it. And it broke my heart. He was in for 19 years. He was about to retire and get a pension and all that kind of stuff.
Now, the Trump administration apparently is going to bring those people back if they want to come back with back pay.
Yes.
Is that happening to him?
Yes.
That's great.
He's going back in.
I know a lot of people that are not. The majority of people are not going back in Canada. And, well, look, like, first of all, Jenny Carignan is the chief of defense staff now, and she's fully pushing the divisive woke DEI agenda. And was like full on board with COVID mandates and lockdowns and policies and CanForgens being like implemented and so I hope she gets fired. I mean, I mean that respectfully. Like, I just wish we had more competent people in positions and not DEI hires, because Brenda Lucki was not it. Teresa like, we just had so many failures at so many different levels, and it should be merit based in these positions and have nothing to do with DEI or who you have sex with or what you identify as.
And he was a commander.
It's fucking crazy. Well, good for him, first of all, for sticking to his guns, and if he knows anybody that's been injured or died from it, I bet he probably feels pretty good about his decision. Give me some volume. So he's getting his shot.
This is Mark Carney. Actually said this out loud.
I want to be clear, and Canadians feel this. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. Mm-hmm. Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration that is now trying to be controlled, and by government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our
year after year after year. Oh yeah, and when was COVID like over in Canada? After the Freedom Convoy. Well, it was several months afterwards, and there were still restrictions and mandates and stuff like that, but less. And but we were not dealing with like the pandemic anymore. And again, Mark Carney was a key financial advisor.
Economy. Okay, so our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump.
Bernie,
I'm going to let him. I'm playing this.
I want to be clear, and Canadians feel this. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. Mm-hmm. Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration, is now trying to be controlled, and by government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. Okay, so our economy was weak before.
And it's even weaker now. Thank you, Chrystia Freeland. By the way, Chrystia Freeland was the deputy prime minister, and she was also the finance minister. And again, completely collapsed our economy. I was emailing her right from the beginning when she started printing money, and I'm like, what the fuck? Respectfully, obviously, but like, you can't do that right now. This is like the literally the opposite. And then with the CERB and like all of that other stuff, and like, it was just like, this woman like has destroyed this country. And then because she was gonna get fired and replaced by Mark Carney officially, she ended up being a little coward too, and she resigned. I'll just see if I have anything else here that I posted on Instagram, on the gram. What is this? Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh fuck. Yeah, because I was talking about honeypots. So I've been talking about honeypots for many years on social media, especially when I started to dox myself more like around like Freedom Convoy time, before it happened, because like I knew there was going to be plants, whether they be crisis actors, role players, instigators, disruptors, government embeds of various different organizations, and including military. And I talked about the coots, I talked about the honeypots. I've said that I've done this type of work as well, and that it's not what people think it is, not escorts or prostitutes. Some people may get to that level as a honeypot, but like oftentimes it's just it's like it's gatherings, it's meetings, it's conventions, it's committees. They're at the bars and stuff like that. They're out in these areas, and they're trying to gain information. And you have to be smart. You have to be well read for a lot of this as well. So many other different things and factors to include. And anyway, so FBI investigating James Comey for orchestrating a secret honeypot operation to plant undercover agents in Trump's 2016 campaign. So 9 years ago, this was happening way before that as well. And this happens in other countries when we have government officials that go to these like other areas. And there's always honeypots implanted in these areas as well. And I wish people would understand that a little more because they seem to keep falling for it. I feel bad too, because even the RCMP using honeypots in Coots, Alberta, trying to radicalize and dupe and anyways, guys from Coots, including brothers, and they were in jail for years. And this was just so fucking unlawful and unconstitutional. I just can't believe how crazy this got, and how much people within government just went completely fucking insane, tyrannical. And it was a two-tiered legal system too, as well, a justice system, highly politicized. Like I want to reiterate. So anyone that was was saying anything that was going against what Justin Trudeau was saying and his lackeys and puppets, if they were going against what he was saying, regardless of how peaceful it was, you were a target. You were absolutely a target, and they wanted your lives to be destroyed and ruined. And they were also acting as social justice fucking warriors as well. And again, just the hatred and like just the lack of compassion and understanding. And actually, like I've even shared screen captures of law enforcement officers from the Freedom Convoy, like the escalation of force and stuff like that. They wanted, like a lot of them wanted this to roll out even more violently, and talking about employing tanks and all this other bullshit. And but when there's other protests, when it's more left, right, it's fully embraced. You actually have law enforcement there to protect them. They don't need protecting. But anyway, just wild times. Yeah, so I did share this on the Vigilante Fox. 10 shocking stories the media buried today. Persuasion expert bets his career on the COVID response being a full-blown psyop. Joe Rogan, do you think that someone sat in a room and the people discussed the best ways to get people to comply? Chase Hughes, yes, oh yes. I would bet my career because it was executed following textbook protocol. I totally agree with that. And I show the proof. Anyway, including Johns Hopkins University and Cambridge being utilized for the psychological operations as well, and various different intelligence communities, even within the Five Eyes community. And I'm all over the place, but speaking about the Five Eyes community, there's rumblings. There's still not a lot of facts or proper sources that have come out to say this, but there's a lot of people talking about it, so I'm just going to put it out there that there's possible discussions of Canada being removed from the Five Eyes community. And at this point, I completely understand why. I think that there's people from within the Five Eyes community at the higher levels, again, that are part of the Bilderberg, Bohemian Grove elitist groups, and they're the ones that are also duping people from within that do think that they're doing a great job, no offense, or are doing a great job, but like not focused on the right things and being distracted and lied to and just, again, just believing it. And but Canada doesn't know fucking, like, they don't know shit at the higher levels about the reality of the world. And so why would the Five Eyes community want people like Melanie Jolie or people like Anita Anand or Bill Blair or Justin Trudeau or Mark? Why would the Five Eyes community want to sit at a table with these morons that have destroyed our country and have no idea? They push so much misinformation online regarding any event. Why would they want to deal with us? They're talking about like I've even called it out on X, like people, like, they still have posts up, people from that are members of parliament and actual experts lying about stuff that happened in Ukraine and Russia, lying about stuff that happened with Israel and Palestine, lying about COVID, still lying about so many other things. Anyway, and so you're either just really dumb and arrogant to boot, or like I don't know, or the ego and narcissism is just through the roof. Yeah. Stuns Glenn Beck with a blunt explanation of how the shadow government subverts the will of the people. They're offended by Doge because their power depends on people not knowing what they're doing with our money.
But they think...
Are we going to be able to stop this? Because I know there's more levels to it than what, we're showing from your research now.
All the globalists, and I don't really like that term globalist, but anyway.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. But they all emphasize this censorship and this secrecy. And the reason why they're offended is because their power depends on people not knowing what they're doing with their money. And so that is truly censorship. Because I think if actual Americans understood what they were doing with our money, and they were actually setting up their own government and actually ignoring what real people wanted to do, we would be so upset. Because the reality is that these people have a government unto themselves that they've created with these NGOs that they run separately from us.
Yep.
And the reason I'm doing this interview is because I want to promote the knowledge to the public that these people operate in different vocabulary with different rules, and they have made their own government inside ours with our money.
Bingo. Well said, lady. I was off friggin'. See, and I was literally complaining about the fact that I'm not an expert with like videos or editing or any of that stuff. Like I'm more of an analyst, an advisor, whatever you want to call it. And so I would love to be hired to anyways, or at least have assistance in creating these videos. This is wild. This is wild. Viva Frey is on it. Like, he is on it.
Idiot on earth. Peace.
A few weeks ago in Saskatoon, I met a little 4-year-old girl. She asked me whether I could prevent Trump from invading our country.
No, she didn't.
And that's why I am standing to lead the Liberal Party.
To lead the Liberal Party. Lady, you are the Liberal Party. You've been in it.
Trump represents the greatest threat to Canada.
This is our liberal former deputy prime minister, former finance minister, and again, look at her fucking resume on that. A disaster, a dumpster fire, literally the worst in both of those jobs ever in the history of the planet. And then she resigned like a coward, the sinking ship, knowing that she was going to get fired and Mark Carney was going to replace her. Again, like not a better option at all. Not a better option, a worse option, I will be clear, her as well. Like she's saying Trump, who has been in office for a little over a month, she's saying that he is the biggest threat to Canada and Canadians right now. These people are so extreme, and they're normalizing it.
Since World War II.
And she says since World War II, I keep on cutting her off. So she's calling Trump essentially Hitler. So she's, again, just like fucking Rachel Maddow and these CNN loonies and Joy Reid. And yeah. Fire these people.
He is threatening us with an economic war, and that's nothing new. The last time that he was president, he threatened us too, and at the end of the day, I succeeded in protecting our economy. But this time, Trump's threats are worse. He wants to turn Canada into the 51st state, and it's no joke. That is why he is supporting Vladimir Putin's criminal attempt to redraw Ukraine's borders. Trump wants to redraw our borders too. We need a leader who understands the seriousness of these challenges and how to face them. A leader that can respond and defend everyone in our wonderful country. I will fight for us. I will fight for Canada. And together, we will
So you're going to
win.
start, I guess? Together we will. Like, again, she's just a shit show. She's a shit show. Yeah. Oh, I don't even know what I want to start with. There's two good videos I want to share. But I wanted to look into General Patrick Hurley because I mentioned him yesterday. It was a bit controversial, but I wanted to say that he, American attorney, Republican Party politician, military officer, and diplomat. There's a lot on him. And he seems to be someone that was of service to his country for the majority of his life. Historical documents. Personal representative of President Roosevelt in Iran to the president. Anyways, memorandum. So anyway, I wanted to share that because I wanted to get into my conversations with ChatGPT. Not to cause controversy, but to share some perspectives of what he had said within his lifetime as well. He's obviously dead now. Okay, so in the years following the war, as the Cold War began to take shape, Hurley suggested that the U.S. should have considered a different alignment, where they might have fought alongside the Axis powers, especially Nazi Germany, against the Soviet Union. Again, this is not me saying it, this is him saying it, but and I'll give the reasons why. These statements were controversial, obviously, and reflected the political thinking of some individuals in the post-war period who viewed the growing communist influence as a more significant threat than fascism. We're seeing this as well, even present day. Communism is a bigger threat than fascism. And again, like they're very much interlinked as well. Like it's very, like communism is very authoritarian. And so the rules that apply in a communist society don't apply to the people that are pushing it, if that makes any sense. Because they're definitely not sharing their wealth and their assets, or going to be giving any of their land from their other countries that they have, or their yachts, or their, It's important to note that Hurley's views were widely criticized and are generally regarded as a minority opinion at the time. Most political and military leaders, including President Harry S. Truman and other key figures, firmly opposed any notion of collaborating with fascism to counter communism. Anyway. And then I was looking into the Vicki Morgan tapes scandals. Not a lot on ChatGPT for obvious reasons. Talked about Alfred Tubman, get into him and his connections and the groups that he's involved in or was involved in. Very interesting. And I'm going to get into those tapes right now. This is a theory. There's not a lot of evidence, I would say, but still very interesting to at least look into. There's enough data in here to at least look further into it. And this was almost the Jeffrey Epstein scandal of the 1980s. And yes, it includes Ronald Reagan in these allegations.
It was nearly the Jeffrey Epstein scandal of the 1980s. It was dubbed Reagangate, and it was so explosive it almost brought down the Reagan administration. The course of the 1980s was nearly changed by this one prostitute who knew a whole lot of secrets. Vicki Morgan's story is one of those classic all-American tales that just warms your heart. Actually, not really. She moved to Los Angeles at 17 to become a movie star and instead got addicted to hardcore drugs and became a prostitute. This was in the early 1970s, and around this time she met a man named Alfred Bloomingdale. Bloomingdale was a very rich man who was from the family that founded Bloomingdale's department store chain. He was also friends with Ronald Reagan, who was governor of California at the time, and Bloomingdale's wife Betsy was Nancy Reagan's best friend. Bloomingdale was a key member of what was called Ronald Reagan's kitchen cabinet, his run for presidency. Now, the part that interests us is that Alfred Bloomingdale loved prostitutes. He owned what was described as a sex dungeon where him and his political buddies would have sex parties with prostitutes. And if you look at this guy, he just kind of looks like the type of dude who would have a sex dungeon in his basement, doesn't he? I don't know, maybe that's just me. But for over a decade, Vicki Morgan served as Alfred Bloomingdale's mistress and participated in sex parties and orgies with him and his political buddies. But then in 1982, Bloomingdale died. Up to his death, he'd paid...
Does that sound from with his other political buddies? Like the Diddy stuff, the Epstein stuff is all coming out, hopefully. And so this is all topical.
Vicki Morgan $10,000 a month for her services. Now that he was dead, that money was gone, and Vicki Morgan quickly went broke. So she sued Alfred Bloomingdale's estate for palimony, and during her deposition, she started revealing details about what happened in Bloomingdale's sex dungeon. And when this information was made public, it went off like a bomb. People speculated about which of Bloomingdale's friends were involved, and it was really the talk of the nation for a while. But Vicki Morgan lost her lawsuit, so she decided to write a tell-all book. She said the information in her book was so explosive, it would make Watergate look like play school. But then something happened in July 1983 that kind of derailed her tell-all book. Vicki Morgan had her head bashed in with a baseball bat. Her roommate Marvin Pancoast was arrested for her murder. It was claimed that Pancoast had a history of mental illness and, how convenient, he'd snapped and decided to bludgeon her to death at the precise moment she was about to write her tell-all book. Marvin Pancoast claimed he was innocent, and there are a ton of questions about his guilt, which we'll get to a little later on in the video.
I didn't kill him.
He literally said he didn't kill her.
Marvin Pancoast. Is he a madman, a spinner of fantasy, or the fall guy in a murder involving government intrigue, as his attorneys have claimed all along?
So Vicki Morgan died, Marvin Pancoast was arrested for her murder, and that's the end of the story, right? Not quite. Because it turned out that Alfred Bloomingdale had rigged his sex dungeon with hidden cameras, and everything that had gone on in there had been taped. It was rumored that Vicki Morgan possessed some of the tapes showing very prominent politicians in the Reagan administration in Bloomingdale's sex dungeon, and that's why she was killed. Marvin Pancoast claimed he'd seen the tapes Vicki possessed, and he described them.
Vicki and a couple of politicians in your, I don't know where it was filmed at. I wasn't around when it was done.
You saw it?
Mm-hmm.
And then things started getting weird. A few days after her death, Marvin Pancoast's lawyer, Robert Steinberg, called a press conference. He announced that a mysterious, unidentified woman had dropped off a duffel bag containing 3 video cassette tapes at his office. Steinberg said the tapes showed prominent government officials in the Reagan administration engaged in very kinky, obscene sex acts with Vicki Morgan. And he was given the tapes to help prove Pancoast had been framed for Vicki Morgan's murder. Now, this was massive, massive news when it was announced. But this bombshell was reduced to ashes the very next day. Steinberg announced that, unbelievably, the tapes had been stolen from his office during his press conference the day before. The Vicki Morgan tapes were now missing, and no one knew what happened to them. And after this, the whole Vicki Morgan tape scandal just basically turned into one big circus. Johnny Carson told jokes about it every night. Saturday Night Live did skits spoofing it. But the scandal was far from over, because Larry Flynt entered the picture. Flint claimed he had paid millions of dollars to an unidentified source for the Vicki Morgan tapes. He now owned the Vicki Morgan tapes, and he was going to release them to the public. Flint was known for the men's magazine Hustler, but he actually had a magazine empire at the time with close to 100 publications. In The Rebel, which was an investigative magazine focused on exposing corruption and conspiracies, he published multiple massive articles about the Vicki Morgan tapes, and he even featured President Reagan's picture on the magazine's cover. The rumors were that Flint paid $20 million for the Vicki Morgan tapes, and he was going to use them to bring down the Reagan administration. He even called a press conference and played the tapes for a group of reporters. This article in the San Francisco Bay Guardian describes what they saw. Flint played a portion of one tape for the skeptical reporters. The black and white video showed a dead ringer for President Ronald Reagan, sans clothing, engaging in a bizarre sex act with a young woman wearing a dildo. The reporters were intrigued, but none wanted to touch the story. They left all the remaining food for the hotel employees to devour. And then right around this time, Larry Flint's life was basically destroyed. He claimed the government was trying to kill him, and he basically barricaded himself in his mansion and never left the house.
Now, if you knew that the President of the United States had committed murder and you could prove it, and the FBI and the CIA works for him, would you leave your house?
His wife contracted AIDS around this time, and there were rumors that she was injected with it as punishment. She turned into a shell of her former self and died shortly after by supposedly drowning in a bathtub. The Rebels suddenly stopped publishing, and the entire staff was fired. Despite its popularity, the magazine didn't even last a year. Right after that, Larry Flint was arrested and sentenced to 15 months in prison. And then the Vicki Morgan tapes scandal just kind of vanished. The actual tapes never surfaced, and the whole issue was kind of just swept under the rug. Marvin Pankos was found guilty of her murder, and he later died in prison. And if you look into his case, it really appears that this poor guy was set up and totally railroaded for this murder. The official story is that Pankos showed up to the North Hollywood police station at 3 in the morning on July 7th, 1983, and he said, "I just killed someone." Officers went to the apartment he shared with Vicki Morgan, found her body, and arrested him. But then he took back that confession shortly after he gave it and claimed he was innocent. His fingerprints weren't on the baseball bat used to kill Vicki Morgan, and even though the crime scene was a bloody mess, when Pankos showed up to the police station right after the murder, he had no blood on him at all. There was literally zero physical evidence linking Marvin Pankos to Vicki Morgan's murder.
Zero physical evidence.
And experts at the time noted that Marvin Pankos might be the first person ever convicted of murder with no physical evidence whatsoever tying him to that crime. During the trial, Pankos' lawyers claimed he was drugged out of his mind and hypnotized into confessing to the murder by unknown assailants. These people murdered Vicki Morgan,
MK Ultra stuff come to mind?
drugged and hypnotized Pankos into confessing to the crime, then stole the sex tapes she possessed. At the police station, officers noted how disoriented and confused Pankos was. The confession he gave was a rambling mess that covered nearly 10 pages, and it contradicted itself multiple times. Now, some might think that the idea of hypnotizing, but it really might not be all that far-fetched. Just do a quick search online and you're going to find a ton of videos and articles about people being hypnotized. If you've undergone the right training, it's apparently pretty easy to hypnotize someone.
Take a nice deep breath. Beautiful. Sleep. Way down deep. All the way down deep. Sleep, 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 sleep. Loosen them. Sleep, 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 sleep. Loosen them, loosen them.
And it's especially easy to hypnotize someone if you're able to use drugs to relax them or put them in a confused state.
I think some people just follow the crowd, right? Like I think some people, I think they're pretending to be hypnotized. Some of these
During the
people.
trial,
I don't know.
Pankos claimed the only thing he remembered about that night was watching Johnny Carson with Vicki Morgan and falling asleep around midnight. He then awoke a few hours later feeling disoriented and nauseous. He said the apartment smelled like medicine or chloroform, and the next thing he knew, he was at the police station with no idea how he'd gotten there. He told the desk clerk, "I just killed someone," but he had no idea why he'd said that, and he didn't remember anything about his 10-page confession that night. Now, another question that was never answered about that night was, how did Marvin Pankos get to the North Hollywood police station from his apartment after the murder? Pankos' car was still parked at the apartment, and police couldn't determine how he'd arrived at the police station. The apartment that Pankos and Morgan shared was 3 miles from the North Hollywood police station, and Pankos showed up around 3 in the morning. When a pathologist examined Vicki Morgan's body at 8 a.m., he estimated her time of death at 4 hours earlier at 4 a.m. And this is just a bit of a slight problem, because Marvin Pankos showed up to the police station and said, "I just killed someone" at 3 a.m., which is a full hour before her estimated time of death. Even if the pathologist's time of death is off by an hour or even 2, there's still no way that Marvin Pankos could kill Vicki Morgan, wipe his prints off the baseball bat, clean up, change his clothes, get rid of his bloody clothes, and walk the 3 miles to the police station. This has led to speculation that someone drove Marvin Pankos to the police station that night. And many people believe it was the same person or people who murdered Vicki Morgan and then drugged and hypnotized Pankos. Author Gordon Bassachis, who Vicki Morgan was working with on her explosive biography, testified in court that on the night before her murder, Vicki had told him she was afraid of being killed. Vicki had confided in me that she was afraid of being murdered, Bassachis said. I have a feeling that someone with knowledge of the Bloomingdale tapes approached her with a proposal for blackmail. And as the saying goes, if you mess with the bull, you get the horns. Vicki Morgan tried to blackmail some very powerful people, and it backfired in a big way and resulted in her murder. In a jailhouse interview, Marvin Pankos talked about how terrified Vicki Morgan was before her death.
She was petrified of the administration and petrified of one particular gentleman in the administration, not the president.
It's also interesting to note that the Vicki Morgan crime scene was not sealed by the LAPD until 24 hours after her death. It's basically unheard of to leave a murder scene unsealed for over a day after a crime. During that time, anyone could have wandered into the apartment and taken the Bloomingdale tapes she possessed, or tampered with the evidence at the crime scene. Ultimately, Marvin Pankos' lawyers' efforts to convince the jury that there was more to the story failed. He was found guilty and died in prison. The Vicki Morgan tapes never surfaced, and this massive, massive controversy that really could have altered the course of the 1980s has been mostly forgotten with time.
Very interesting. Yeah, just the even just I just gotta shut this off just a second. Just even with like the timing differences, like 3 miles, like there's like 1 mile is the equivalent of 1.6 kilometers, and so even with the 3 miles, it's like approximately 4.8 kilometers, and like a good run for 5 kilometers for like the average person, let's say, is anywhere between like 22 and 25 minutes, depending on if you're male or female, and that's with a good run. And so we used to try to average a pace of approximately 1 kilometer every 10 minutes. And so even with that, it would be approximately 50 minutes, where if he was going at a solid pace to get to the precinct from the location that he was at, where they found her body. And so even in that in itself, like how would he have been able to, again, like clean up, shower, all of this stuff, remove prints, all of these things that it's like the impossibility, again, I just want to reiterate, was it just makes it interesting that we should be looking more into this. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, before I get into Eric Dubé with another friggin' great video, he did upload his video again about the population hoax, and I highly recommend people watch that. I've shared that too because it's all connected. Oh, I wanted to get into, yeah, just like regarding the Five Eyes community stuff as well. I again, I'll reiterate that even when I was still serving, like I did have concerns that there was possibly people within the Five Eyes community that were plants or spies or being used, like their like access to their information from people, from organizations like Pegasus, for example, that can gain access and hack your information and look at your emails, look at your messages, and or like listen in on your conversations and all that stuff. And so can gain access indirectly. Like I said, I had concerns with that just based on like past events and how we were lied to and misled by people clearly within these communities, because again, like this is a lot, like you have to do a lot of intelligence gathering, and you have to really know about what happened during major events. You have to, at these levels, you have to. And Canada, like with the moon landing hoaxes and shit like that, like and with the MK Ultra stuff, Canada has had so much involvement in that stuff, like really fucking over and making organizations that would be good and beneficial, like making them lose credibility. And so, like, I can understand why, like, we've just been very disappointing. Like, even with COVID, like we had Chinese top, like, scientists with top secret government clearance that were working at the Winnipeg lab and again doing gain of function research like on Canadians and the influence on the transmissibility amongst humans here, gain of function, like right on our own fucking land. And so of course they're gonna have issues with us when we are more allied, or there's a lot more foreign interference and influence from countries where there are concerns that need to be addressed, right? And they're not being addressed and lied to about that as well. And so, yeah, so like not only do we have to be aware that even within the Canadian Five Eyes community, we have to be like cognizant that there are people from the other communities that may be giving us incorrect information to get us involved into proxy wars and other things. And but we may also be the ones that are contributing to it, because even for the moon landings with Pierre Elliott Trudeau, like he had the fake like the astronauts, like he had them come. I believe it was on the 2nd of December, or maybe it was the 7th. Anyway, there was the 201 or the 20 or the 27 that was involved in the gematria numbers, and then being on July 20th of 1969, like this was the 201st day of the year, and so there's just people with event 201 for COVID, so many more things revolving these numbers. But he had these astronauts come into Ottawa, right in freaking Parliament, and he was celebrating these liars that allegedly landed on the moon, and so like I think he's part of the bullshit. And he is also someone that was a fucking groomer. And so even Margaret Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's mother, like she was very young. I think she was like 13 years old or 14 years old when they first met on a beach in BC. And then he had an interest in her after that interaction. Fucking weird shit. Like, and people are saying like, oh, it's because of the times. Like those excuses, like to accept that type of behavior and allow it to keep on being perpetuated, like, it's just so disgusting to me now. Like, I'm so over it.
So sort of this more elite tier would be the people that determine AI's objective function, that program and develop AI and understand what AI does to people. And then the lower class presumably would be much larger, and that is the class that AI will act upon, but people will lose the ability to know what AI is doing to them. And they argue that this process of people losing the ability to know what AI is doing to them will happen because of this phenomena they refer to as cognitive diminishment, which is sort of this idea, and that's pretty easy to verify. If you don't do if you stop doing mental math and use a calculator all the time, it gets harder and harder and harder to do mental math. And the same is true for really like any skill that you don't practice. So they argue that because of the convenience of AI and how it's been creeping into our lives, and I think we've seen this a lot since the advent of generative AI, it will become harder and harder and harder and eventually impossible for people to do certain things, including make decisions for themselves, because the AI will tell you where to go. It will tell you what music to listen to. It will tell you what clothes to buy. And essentially, that's their vision. People will eventually lose the ability to make those decisions for themselves or even develop their own preferences without the assistance of artificial intelligence. And so obviously the way to fight against that is to not outsource all of your decision making and skills to that. And unfortunately, I think as we've seen with the rise of generative AI, people are creating less. People are outsourcing their creativity to AI, have AI make art for me, have AI write things for me. And eventually that leads to a world where in a generation, people don't know how to create art or create music or write without AI. And what does that ultimately mean for humanity? Then essentially we do end up in sort of this helpless state where we become dependent on machines to function. But it only happens if we voluntarily give ourselves over to that type of system and decline to use the abilities granted to us by our consciousness and our souls, and decide to let machines do it for us and have them become the creators and have us just be processors
Consumers.
for AI, batteries like the Matrix. I mean, I don't know, but I'd rather not see that come to fruition. And I think the way to avoid that is very easily within the hands of anybody, regardless of your economic status or what your skills are. Everybody can create something. Maybe you whittle things out of wood. Maybe you make music. Maybe you make art, visual art, or other, woven art. I don't know. There's all sorts of things people do. People have always been creating ever since we've existed as a species. And I think if we surrender that, then the post-human future.
I absolutely believe that this is a creating and created reality. And so even more examples too would be like even growing food or creating babies. Like there's just so many different ways that we can create and we should be creating. And we're going to be giving a more freedoms and liberties for convenience, and it's going to de-evolve us even further. We cannot become reliant on this bio-digital convergence, thinking that this hybrid is going to somehow make us evolve further. It's going to make us more reliant. And again, the people that are programming these AI software, whatever you want to call it, systems, these systems are getting what people, humans, put into the system, right? So like that is their knowledge base. That's their codings and stuff like that. And I just can't stress that enough.
Would be an inevitability. And that's essentially what these people are hoping for.
So those who control AI will literally be controlling humanity.
And I think it's important for people to fight against that.
Even
and I
with
think
the particles in the air and stuff like that, and like what's in our bodies, and EMF technologies, sonic technologies, laser technologies.
when people talk about resisting this agenda, this is something that inherently gets left out of that discussion, and I don't think it should be at all. Because again, I don't think people are really reading what a lot of these architects of AI policy are thinking and saying. People are just willingly using it because it's convenient, it's easy, but without really thinking about long-term consequences. And I'm sure people that have been using generative AI, I don't know, in independent media to generate content for your site, has it gotten harder to write those things after using it for a year? Probably. For those people, I would wager. And that type of phenomena is only going to get worse. And what happens when we can't even think for ourselves anymore? Because stopping creating, not being able to write, eventually you're not going to be able to think without the help of this algorithm. And again, as I mentioned earlier, AI is prone to hallucinating, seeing realities that aren't there, and all sorts of things. And how deep could we get dragged into some sort of artificial illusion if we sort of outsource our thinking and our creativity to this type of entity? It's kind of funny because Schmidt and Kissinger argue that these hallucinated realities, AI seeing realities that humans can't observe, mean that the reality must be real because AI is so much more intelligent than us, so that we should believe whatever it sees that's unobservable. And I don't know, maybe that could be true in some instances, but since there's no way to verify, do we really want to shape society around what could be hallucinations of some, human created machine, just because, certain people that are powerful in society have an almost religious like devotion to artificial intelligence?
It's like the 100?
I don't think that makes any sense, personally.
It's funny. A lot of these people are like staunch atheists, but it's like a muscle. What you're saying is like, if you don't use your muscle, if AI is doing all the lifting for you, you're going to atrophy. And
yeah,
I think it's twisted because AI is doing all this creative stuff. It's making the paintings, the music, the art. And here I am doing dishes, and I'm like, why isn't the AI doing the dishes? Why is it doing all the stuff I want to do? I'm an artist and a video creator, and one of the most common questions people ask me is, aren't you worried that AI is going to be able to do what you do really soon? And I am a little concerned. And for me, the work behind the art adds a lot of value to it. So like when I see a movie
absolutely,
that took years to make, and like Lord of the Rings, where they went to such great effort to make that movie, and it took Tolkien 10 years to write the book, there's tremendous meaning there for me. And I asked somebody, I was like, if Lord of the Rings was made in 2 seconds with AI, would that change the meaning for you? And there were some people, I'm surprised, some people are like, no, I just want the product. I just want the final product. I don't care about the backstory.
Yeah, a lot of people are like that, but I think those people may just already not really already have the atrophy of creativity that I just sort of mentioned. But ultimately, when you engage in a creative act, what are you filling up or fulfilling, or what muscle, as you put it, are you using? I would argue it's your soul, right? If you just have AI make it, the person that's making it doesn't get the same type of feeling they get if they actually like engaged in the act of making art themselves or with another human, So if we let our souls atrophy because we're not doing anything that have been fulfilling to human souls for thousands of years, what does that ultimately mean? interesting in that same Schmidt-Kissinger book, they basically say that AI taking over will lead to one of two consequences. One of them is that the peasants rise up and overthrow the elite. That's one scenario, and probably not the scenario that Schmidt and Kissinger want. And then the second scenario is that AI spawns the creation of a new religion. So out of those two allegedly inevitable scenarios per those people, obviously I think it's quite clear, if you're familiar with the backgrounds of Schmidt and Kissinger, the outcome they want is that it creates a new religion. So we atrophy our souls and creativity and that spark that makes us
one world
human
religion.
and outsource it to AI, and then it becomes a new religion. I mean, it's pretty crazy. It makes me think of the Greek myth of Narcissus, where he falls in love with his falls in love with his reflection. You know, that would definitely be a way that gets us to that post-human future, and it's something I think people should resist, because there's something important about humanity. There's obviously a reason that there's sort of this push to sort of snuff that out, and I think ultimately it leads to a world where humans are just easily controlled and essentially either harvested for data, harvested for energy, harvested for something, and not creators anymore. And it's up to anybody if they choose what path they choose to go down, whether they're going to go down the path of someone who creates and can manifest, and who can, you know, actively do things and actively make decisions and have preferences and do these things that ultimately are part of what defines humans, right? Or if they're going to go down the path of I'm going to be lazy essentially and let these machines do everything for me. But then you become either not necessarily even part of the machine. You end up, instead of the machine serving you, you end up serving the machine. And I think that's how we get to digital slavery quite fast if too many people take that path. So I think there's a lot of things people can do to, you know, resist these agendas. But I think that is a very easy and very important thing for people to do and consider.
Yeah, I like the dichotomy of what you said, where there's going to be the people that control AI, and then there's the people that are controlled by AI. And like, what is your approach to AI? Are you like, let's reject it all and live in a cabin in the woods, or are you like, we need to get ahead of this thing? Like, what's your philosophy?
Well, I have how I live personally. You know, I personally don't use it at all. But you know, I have a great assistant that helps run my website, and you know, a huge part of my business. Who's an amazing.
Okay, so there are people. Oh, the video was off. There are people that also call like what you have like a puppet and all this stuff and controlled opposition. But like when she shares videos like that are actually well put together, she's incredibly intelligent, and she's correct in my assessment as well. And so like I don't see how like that would be like a disservice to us, right? So even if she was someone that was like, let's say, hired by government, what she's doing is I think a good thing. Like, I don't know, like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, does that make sense to anyone? And yeah, and I could talk about friggin' Tucker Carlson getting threatened by Dan Crenshaw. Like, I don't really care too much about that. Like, I don't think he meant it literally. And so, but again, it's still a threat. And Tucker Carlson has called him out on stuff, but like including, I think he's also called out his financial, whatever you want to call them, crimes as well, that were funded by your taxpayers' dollars in order to get him to have like minimal charges and fines because of the financial crimes that he was involved in, fraud and all that other stuff. I think fraud. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I want to get into where is this? Okay, so Dan Bongino. I wanted to share because he's going to get into people that are hating on him and minimizing like the work that he's done in the past. And I just want to bear with me. Like, I was watching a bit of it yesterday. And he shares his a bit of his resume, and I think it was a good call.
The FBI was, I don't know what to call it, hyperbolic, hysterical, and I don't mean hysterical in the funny way. I mean hysterical, like, is this for real? Is this even? It's so out there. Like, my gosh, we got a guy with political opinions in government. I know that they all have the same exact talking points. It's not going to affect or impact my career choices in any way at all. I promise you. Check this out.
that President Trump announced that former Fox News personality Dan Bongino will be second in command to lead the FBI. This is the latest in a series of Trump's controversial picks for high-profile law enforcement roles. Trump named Bongino as deputy FBI director yesterday. To note, that job is traditionally held by a career FBI agent. In fact, it's believed this is the first time a political appointee got that post. He is a former Secret Service agent and NYPD officer, though he has never served in the FBI. As a pro-Trump podcaster, he has advanced a number of baseless theories about the bureau he is set to lead. The appointment does not require Senate confirmation, but it's already receiving real backlash. Here's how one former FBI official reacted to Bongino's new role, saying in part, quote, "This is really concerning. Any hope that Cash, meaning Cash Bell, the FBI director, could be steered by having experienced leaders around him is out the window. We now have two conspiracy theorists and election deniers running our premier law enforcement and intelligence agency. That is beyond problematic."
I'm sorry, I'm writing this down because again, this is the least of the hysterical. What they did, the fellas here, what they did is they graded up the hysteria with each one. So we've got 3 more, so don't go anywhere. But I'd be remiss if I didn't address it because you're going to hear these points over and over. What exactly is the conspiracy theory? You know, it's fascinating. I'm not even going to name my books because I don't care. I don't want to sell you anything. I'm not even interested. I assume they're referring to my books about the collusion hoax and the spying scandal. But the fascinating thing about my books is they're footnoted and endnoted extensively with their own reporting. You can look at it. You can actually read the books yourself. And you'll find out that, there may have been a conspiracy. There's nothing in the book that's theoretical. You notice how they never cite what they're talking about. But when they do, they leave it in bird's eye view stuff because they know if they get down to the granular, they're going to be exposing their role in what they call a conspiracy theory, which was no theory at all. Second, election denier. Fellas, have we ever denied an election happened? The election happened. I don't know what election denier means. I really don't. I know what you think it means. But election denier means we're denying an election? Is that what that means? Well, so wait, election denier to you in the media is what? That I question the outcome of an election in 2020, which I stand by? Like Hillary Clinton, Stacey Abrams, Maxine Waters. You want me to list like 10 or 15 other Democrats? So we need to play the video of Democrats questioning every election they've lost. Are they election? Oh, no, they're not election deniers. You see how this journalism field works now? Hey, freedom of the press is inviolable. Listen to me. I actually believe in my oath in the Constitution when I take it, but you also have the freedom to be ridiculous. And calling us names, me and Cash, like election denier, when we've never denied an election. And I don't speak for Cash, I speak for me. I stand by my content. The New York Times...
I'm not American, I'll reiterate that, but I definitely follow American politics because it does directly influence Canada and Canadians. And I also believe that the election was stolen. There was a lot of, and it's been proven already, right? So like this is irrefutable. So it's not that we're denying there was an election that took place. We know it did. We're not retarded. No offense. I shouldn't use that word, but anyways, old army friggin' anyway, coming out. It's that the Hunter Biden scandals were censored and suppressed and removed. The Russiagate stuff that get involved, like other members of the government, including Hillary Clinton. So the highest friggin' levels that were involved in election interference, lying about things that happened, Russia hoax, all that stuff. Suppressed the Biden's daughter's diary that finally got leaked eventually and stuff like that. But people are saying afterwards, Democrats were saying that had they known any of this stuff beforehand, they would not have voted for him. And then there's the interesting amount of numbers of voters between that period and 2020 and 2024 with the Democrat voters and looking at the voter fraud that was going on as well. Oh my God, I can go on and on. But even people that were here illegally were able to vote without providing any form of ID in certain democratically owned states, and super inflated their numbers. And then also, again, across the country, there was a lot of it was more like left-leaning people that were sabotaging elections or putting in multiple votes using names of people that didn't even know they were voting, that were coming in from other countries. Like again, it was just like and so like we were saying that, right? As we were saying that there's a lot of friggin' corruption that happened. And of course, no one got held accountable for it. And it absolutely impacted your election. So you should be concerned about that. And you should want people to investigate what actually happened so that it doesn't happen again.
Selves in 2012, look it up, wrote a piece by Adam Liptak questioning the efficacy of mail-in ballots. Look it up yourself. Was he an election denier too? Notice how the standards are no standards at all. You got to smile a little bit at the total meltdown. How they have no problem appointing the hardest of partisans to any position they feel like. Then you get a guy like me who's actually got a nonpartisan history doing the same kind of professional work. And all of a sudden they're freaking out. What evidence do we have he can act in a nonpartisan manner? I don't know. The fact that he did in his last job, I don't know. Quick break, and we'll graduate up here in meltdown mode. Nicole Wallace, in shock over this, buys one of America's most trusted names in emergency pastures, including chicken, beef, fruits, and vegetables, and 24/7 USA-based support. .com. That's
sorry.
The conspiracy theories, the outrage, the tightness of the teeth.
I don't know if there's something in the water. Obviously, I'd be wearing a suit and tie, so it would look a little different, but I found it kind of odd that that's the one thing you'd notice. Really strange. Check this out.
It's funny.
The conspiracy theories, the outrage, the tightness of the T-shirts, all of it surely floats Donald Trump's boat and his music to his ears. It's likely part of the very essence of the reason he was selected. The job of Deputy Director of the FBI of the United States of America is a serious job that affects every person living here, people around the world. It's the kind of job that has to be done well by whomever does it, if the Bureau stands any chance of actually catching real bad guys.
Okay. Yes, you're right. I know very little about catching real bad guys. Folks, bragging about your own resume is tasteless, and it's...
See, he gets into it. I don't agree with him on here, because I think that people like him, it's necessary to talk more about your credentials because it gives you more credibility. And it just, again, they're lying about you. They were calling him a podcaster, a conspiracy theorist, or like a right-wing extremist, all of this stuff. And he's not even a conspiracy theorist. This is ridiculous. If you look at his content, his show, he's never said anything that was not where he didn't have facts. And he's been incorrect about certain things, but again, he's not perfect. And anyway,
loser material. I'm hesitant to even mention this.
You should.
Is Nicole Wallace aware of what I actually did before? Why am I asking stupid questions? Of course she is. I don't know. 4 years with the NYPD, 2 as a cadet in the pattern identification module, eventually, investigating pattern criminals in Queens, New York, one of the boroughs. 2 years as a police officer in the 7-5 precinct, which anyone in the chat here from the 7-5 precinct, you want to tell everyone how busy the 7-5 precinct in Eastern New York, Brooklyn was? Anyone in the chat want to educate them? Then I left and went to the United States Secret Service, where I went to the New York field office, then transferred to the Melville office on Long Island, where I worked on a financial crimes task force. And you know what's really crazy? I work with guys from this 3-letter agency called the FBI. I'd give you their names, but it would be totally inappropriate. They had a LIRA, Long Island Resident Agency. They were on the task force. And we worked a case that was so big, we actually got an award from the Department of Justice. Matter of fact, the United States Attorney, his name was actually Stephen King. Yes, like the writer. Isn't that ironic? Who later went on to work at DHS. It was a $100 million plus credit card fraud case that had a nexus to terrorism. I'm sure Nicole knows a lot about that. Then I left to be an instructor at the Secret Service Training Academy. You guys are never going to believe what I taught. If I ever told you this, I haven't, because who really gives about my resume, right? You know what I taught at the Secret Service Academy? And I encourage you to check this out, guys. There's like a FOIA. Call the Secret Service. Give them permission, right, to put all this out there. I taught criminal investigations for 2 years. So weird. What would I know about criminal investigations? I don't know. I taught them. Outside of that, no idea. And then I left to go to the Dignitary Protective Division. And then I left to go to
at the highest levels of government, he taught criminal investigations.
Presidential protection.
What does he know?
On presidential protection, I protected Republicans and Democrats and was one of about 25 guys on the president's detail who were qualified to do lead advances. And then I left and went to the Baltimore field office, where we cracked a fraud case so big it was on the cover of the Baltimore Sun. You can just look that up, Baltimore Sun, Dan Bongino. Nicole doesn't want to. She's happy, content, sitting behind a desk, criticizing. See, I actually do. And Nicole has the right the absolute right to criticize as a citizen of the United States first, but she is in the media. And I've always said, and will continue to always say, I respect that. And she has the right when I get in the FBI and swear in, both Kash Patel and I, to critique whatever she wants.
Yep.
But that doesn't make what you say right, correct, or even remotely attached to reality. Sorry for the resume, folks, but I've never said that to you on the air.
And that's why MSNBC is failing and lying about it, even with Rachel Maddow. Again, I'll just talk about Joy Reid and her just saying that she's like basically like the best person she's ever worked with ever. And it's like a detriment to, to media to like lose her and stuff like that. She was a racist. She was a radical. She was extreme. She didn't get anything right. And neither has Rachel Maddow. And she's never retracted anything that she has said. And again, $25 million a year now. She got a pay cut of $5 million. It was $30 million a year. And she's spewing garbage. And the only reason why like this legacy media is even still in existence, in my opinion, is because they're they get streamed in airports, they get streamed in hotels and motels, and in airplane, like everywhere you go, basically, like in gyms, it's all over the freaking place, right? And so it's not even like people are even watching it. It's just that they're forced to be in the same fucking room as this stuff. And a lot more people are going to Fox, like I've said, or the more right-wing media outlets because, oh, guess what? They're actually not conspiracy theorists or radicals or extremists or pushing out bullshit. For the most, I mean, some are, like Ben Shapiro, for example, with what's going on in Israel and Palestine. I'll talk about that. But anyway.
And I encourage anyone out there in the media to go and request from the Secret Service or the NYPD my personnel records. Have at it. And you'll see what I'm telling you is 100% accurate.
So I did appreciate that resume. That was really impressive. And there's a lot of things that he's obviously leaving out. And so you would want someone that's a non-bias investigator to look into the FBI, into possible corruption at the highest levels. There's great work being done at the FBI. I've said this before, and the CIA. Like, I do think that these organizations are necessary, but I do believe that, again, with like all the misinformation and psyops and propaganda and staged and planned events that are happening, these people are either getting lied to from within and getting sabotaged from within. And Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are going to be looking into this, which people should be happy about. Or they just are being lied to by other organizations and just believing it without doing the proper research and investigations into things. Again, I'll reiterate, like the moon landings, like 9/11, like January 6th, like the JFK assassination, like countless other events. Look into the Epstein list, the Diddy lists, the other lists, and seeing who's involved in that. And they're not. And then with the FBI, like getting forced, not getting forced, I don't know. They were to like look into January 6ers, peaceful and not, or anyways, peaceful, and ruining lives. Like, that's not your job. Respectfully. Anyways, into the big video here. I don't know if I've shared this before, but Eric DeBay, he shares some great videos.
Sophistry is defined as the use of fallacious arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving, sometimes knowingly and more often unknowingly. Yep. People use sophist, logically fallacious statements when arguing in favor or defense of various propositions. Without a basic understanding of formal logic and the logical fallacies commonly used, it is very easy to be persuaded by sophist arguments. During debates regarding the topic of geocentric flat Earth versus heliocentric globe Earth cosmologies, a myriad of flat Earth fallacies and sphere Earth sophistry is often employed, and makes a good case study for students of formal logic. The equivocation fallacy is when a term with more than one meaning is used without specifying which definition is meant. For example, the word round can be used to mean both a circle or a sphere, and with reference to the shape of the Earth, exactly which type of round is meant drastically changes the statement. A similar fallacy, known as false equivalency, often happens when globe earthers, attempting to explain how water can curve around and stick to a spinning sphere, cite water droplets, meniscus, adhesion, or other phenomena which cannot be shown to occur in samples larger than a glass of water. If the claim is large bodies of standing water bending and showing convexity upon their surface, citing single water droplets or the meniscus in a glass of water as evidence of water curving, is a fallacy of false equivalency. The black and white fallacy, otherwise known as a false dilemma, is when two opposing statements are presented as the only possible options, when in fact there are more. For example, when globe earthers attempt to refute flat Earth claims by demanding photos or videos showing the edge of the Earth. Most flat earthers make no claims as to what may or may not exist beyond Antarctica, because humanity has been prevented by treaty from independent exploration. We may be enclosed by a dome firmament, as claimed by the Bible and many ancient cultures. There may be other Earth-like ponds beyond Antarctica, or the Earth could potentially be infinite. But to assume Earth is flat with an edge, or else it must be a spinning ball, is an example of a false dilemma. The black and white fallacy. Begging the question, or circular reasoning, is a fallacy whereby an argument's premises assume the truth of the conclusion. For example, the proposition that for thousands of years people have known the Earth to be spherical, therefore the Earth is a sphere, is an instance of circular reasoning, since the conclusion was already presupposed in the premise. Thus, begging the question is attempting to prove a proposition while simultaneously taking that proposition for granted. The definist fallacy is similar to circular reasoning in that it involves fallaciously adding the definition of one property in terms of another. For example, when flat earthers point out that buoyant force causes objects denser than the medium surrounding them to fall, and objects lighter than the medium surrounding them to rise, defenders of the theory of gravity will often commit the definist fallacy by claiming gravity as the cause for buoyant force. Even in vacuum chamber experiments, one cannot separate the supposed effects of Earth's gravity as a control, making it impossible to prove this alleged correlation, and making it a definist fallacy to claim gravity as the cause of buoyant force. The many questions fallacy, otherwise known as a loaded question, is when a complex question is formed that contains a controversial assumption. For example, crafty globe earthers will often ask something like, do flat earthers exist all around the globe? Since flat earthers don't believe the world is a globe, answering the question either way with yes or no would be admitting through implication that Earth is actually a globe. Therefore, when presented with the fallacy of many questions, the best response is neither yes or no, but to address and negate the assumption by saying something like, Earth is not a globe, but flat earthers do exist all across the flat Earth. The hasty generalization, also known as the faulty generalization fallacy, or argument from anecdote, occurs when arguing an inductive generalization based on insufficient evidence and rushing to a conclusion without considering all variables. Globe defenders often make the claim that nature prefers spheres, or gravity creates spheres, or spheres are nature's fundamental shape, then point to water drops, bubbles, apples, the sun, moon, or stars as proof. This is shown to be a hasty generalization, however, since the sun, moon, and stars only appear circular, not spherical, and a variety of nature's other fundamental shapes are not spherical. Apples may be more or less spherical, but what about pears, bananas, starfruit, peppers, and cucumbers? Nature seems to prefer variety, diversity, and creativity more than a single spherical shape. The slothful induction, or appeal to coincidence, is the opposite of the hasty generalization fallacy, in which an inductive argument is still rejected despite overwhelming evidence for inference. For example, every pendulum on Earth, including construction tower cranes and Museum Foucault's pendulums, all require a manual swing to start their motion. Yet, stubborn globe apologists often use appeal to coincidence and claim all consequent motion stems from the alleged spinning of the Earth underneath the pendulum. In reality, if the world's cranes and pendulums' motion had anything to do with a globe constantly spinning beneath them, there would never be a stationary pendulum on Earth. The no true Scotsman fallacy, or appeal to purity, is when one attempts to protect their original generalized statement from a legitimate falsifying counterexample by simply excluding it. Instead of abandoning the falsified universal generalization or providing evidence to disqualify the counterexample, someone employing appeal to purity will just claim the counterexample is not true, real, authentic, genuine, or pure. For example, I used to state that no legitimate flat earthers believe Earth to be constantly rising at 9.8 meters per second, as the farcical Flat Earth Society website claims. That is, until a popular Scottish flat earther and his supporters came out of the cosmological closet as upward rising flat earthers. Now, to prevent myself from ironically committing the no true Scotsman fallacy, I cannot simply say that no genuine flat earthers believe this, but must modify to a less universal statement like, very few flat earthers believe this. The proof by assertion fallacy, or proof by repeated assertion, is a rather childish and stubborn tactic employed by repeatedly restating a proposition regardless of any contradiction or refutation. For example, if a flat earther simply repeatedly states, "It's flat, bro," time and again, or a globe earther says over and over, "We have photographs of the globe," these are instances of the proof by assertion fallacy. Such statements may have a persuasive peer pressure effect on the weak-willed, but these arguments are illogical and fallacious. The appeal to stone fallacy is the opposite of proof by repeated assertion, and works by dismissing an argument as untrue or absurd by simply reiterating that it is so without offering any other evidence. For example, when globe defenders claim flat Earth is absurd and proven wrong centuries ago, or flat earthers claim the globe doesn't exist, but then refuse to offer any corroborating evidence and simply reiterate their claim over and over, this is an instance of appeal to the stone. The ad hominem, otherwise known as attacking the person or poisoning the well, is a logical fallacy that occurs when someone tries to undermine their opponent's argument by ignoring the substance of it, and instead directing personal attacks at their opponent's character, motive, appearance, skills, or other factors irrelevant to the issue at hand. For example, when globe earthers call flat earthers derogatory names, insult our intelligence, take shots at our physical appearance, the sound of our voice, or other irrelevant factors, these may be persuasive, but fail to provide any valid logical reason against the argument at hand. The argument from authority fallacy, also known as appeal to authority, is when the perceived reliability of an expert's opinion is offered as the sole reason for accepting the truth of a related argument. Even trusted authority figures can be wrong, mistaken, omitting, or purposely obfuscating the truth, and they must prove their contentions just like everyone else. For example, when globe defenders appeal to the genius of Einstein or the ingenuity of Newton, claiming Earth could not be flat because that would contradict the opinions of the smartest men in history, this is not a valid argument. The courtier's reply fallacy is an inverted form of the appeal to authority, where a person without authority, disagreeing with an authority, is automatically presumed incorrect. Or when a respondent to criticism claims the critic lacks sufficient credentials, training, or knowledge to pose any criticism whatsoever. When Joe Rogan dismissed my entire flat Earth argument on his podcast by simply stating, "You're not a scientist. You're not wearing a lab coat." This is an example of the courtier's reply fallacy. The appeal to ridicule fallacy, also called appeal to mockery, is when an opponent's argument is presented as ridiculous or absurd and therefore not worth to laughably commonplace events for comedic effect and work by inspiring strong emotional reactions in the listener. When globe earthers make the humorous argument, "Earth cannot be flat, because if it was, cats would have knocked everything off the edge by now," this is an example of appeal to mockery. Appeal to tradition, or appeal to common practice, is the fallacy of arguing that something is correct simply because it correlates with a present or past tradition. For example, when heliocentrists claim
So 142. Gonna reload it. Apologies for the delay. It's almost over. Excuse me. Maybe if I connect to another country.